A surprise leader following parliamentary elections in Iraq, but more than a month after the vote, still no official result. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Iraq's parliamentary election in May was supposed to determine the next government. Marred by low voter turnout and charges of fraud, the vote is now subject to a recount of suspect ballots. Preliminary results show the bloc led by radical Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, a longtime foe of the United States, finished first. Iraq's current Prime Minister, al-Abadi, a US ally, was third. Analysts say Sadr alone won't have enough seats in parliament to form a government and determine the next Prime Minister. With the unfinished recount, lots of intrigue remains. To help us understand it all, we go now to our newsroom and CGTN's Nathan King. And Nathan, laid out for us, there's two different alliances, both involving Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. What do we know about him, and how is this likely to play out?
Yeah, you're right. It's a complicated situation. All domestic politics from the outside of every country is complicated, but some are more complicated than others, and I think Iraq definitely falls into that list. Yeah, Iraq, basically, Muqtada al-Sadr emerged with the biggest block of votes in Parliament, the most amount of seats, and straight away, after jockeying for position, he actually formed an alliance with a radical Shiite cleric who's known to be close to Iran, and that's al-Abadi, and it was thought that the direction of the government was going in that way. But then, as you mentioned, another alliance, which are not contradictory, according to Muqtada al-Sadr, with the sitting Prime Minister al-Abadi. So you've got these two alliances, and if you brought all three parties that are represented here, you would basically get probably enough for a government. You need about 140 seats in Parliament. They have about 160 or so between them. The interesting thing here is that Muqtada al-Sadr basically campaigned against foreign influences, both US and Iranian, and basically championed himself as a sort of Iraqi nationalist. And of course, al-Abadi has been seen as close to the Americans, and Hadi al-Ameri very much close to the Iranians and the Iranian militias, of course, which did so well in retaking Mosul and pushing back on Sunni extremists. So it's a very complicated picture, but what you have here essentially is Muqtada al-Sadr as the kingmaker. Now, he's unlikely to be Prime Minister himself. He's actually not a member of Parliament, although that could change. So he's essentially the kingmaker between these two very different camps.
Nathan, Iraq has been something of a battleground for influence between Iran and the United States, which is likely to come away with more influence after this election.
Well, it's really interesting when Tehran and Washington are both disappointed with the results of parliamentary elections in Iraq. But the fact that Muqtada al-Sadr campaigned as an Iraqi nationalist, pushing back against al-Abadi's perceived US bias, and also against Iranian Shiite militias with Iranian influence, suggests that both Washington and Tehran are upset here. What we do have, though, no matter how this works out, is a definite leaning towards a Shiite government. I mean, obviously, the dominant ethnic and religious group in Iraq, that is likely, but other coalitions have been formed with Kurdish and Sunni groupings as well. It's more likely that we will see an all-Shiite or mostly Shiite coalition, which you could say would tend towards Iran. But as you know, all politics are local, so don't just necessarily see this as a result of a proxy fight between the US and Iran when it comes to Iraq. Iraqi politics dominate first.
Thanks, Nathan. That's CGTN's Nathan King reporting from our newsroom.